Let's talk about a deeply emotional and manipulative scam that targets people when they're at their most vulnerable. Imagine losing a loved one and while you're still grieving, getting a call from a debt collector claiming that you're responsible for their unpaid debts. It's not just cruel, it's often a scam. In this video, we're going to explore the growing industry of collecting debts from the deceased, what your rights are, and how to handle those calls with confidence. But before we begin, let me remind you that I am not a lawyer. While I've worked hard to gather accurate information on this video is based on my research and personal experience. If you have legal questions or concerns, I encourage you to consult with a qualified attorney. You can find a list of legal aid clinics on our website at lowincomerelief.com/legal-aid. Okay, so now let's dive in. There is a growing industry built around collecting the debts of people who have passed away. Debt collectors know that the grieving process can leave families feeling overwhelmed and confused, and they exploit this vulnerability to pressure their relatives into paying up. However, in most cases, you are not responsible for your deceased relative's debts. Here's the truth. You usually have no legal obligation to pay your relative's debts unless one of two things applies. First, you may be responsible if you were a co-signer on the debt. Being a co-signer means that you agreed to take on financial responsibility if the other person was unwilling or unable to pay at any point, and that means that debt collectors could hold you accountable. Second, you may be liable if you were the spouse of the deceased and you live in a community property state. Community property states have laws that make spouses responsible for certain debts incurred during the marriage. Now, if neither of these situations applies to you, the debt collector is supposed to seek payment from the deceased person's estate. The estate's going to include all of the assets and property left behind, and it's used to pay off debts before anything is distributed to heirs or family members. If the estate doesn't have enough money to cover the debts, the debt collector is just out of luck. Unfortunately, some collectors aren't willing to accept that reality. So instead, they use scare tactics and emotional manipulation to pressure close relatives into paying up. They may conveniently forget to tell you that you're not legally obligated to pay, and instead they might try to guilt you or coerce you into sending them money. This behavior is not just unethical, it's illegal, but in a lot of cases that doesn't stop debt collectors. So what should you do if a debt collector contacts you about a deceased relative's debt? First and foremost, know your rights and responsibilities. Unless you were a co-signer or the spouse in a community property state, you are not responsible for that debt. Understanding this up front can help you stay calm and avoid being manipulated. If the collector insists that you're responsible, request detailed information in writing. Ask them to provide documentation of the debt and proof that you have a legal obligation to pay it. This is your right under federal law, and legitimate debt collectors are required to comply. If they can't provide the documentation or if the debt isn't valid, they have to stop contacting you. Now, if the debt collector is using aggressive tactics, misrepresenting your obligations, or failing to disclose that you're not legally required to pay, it's important to take action. Report their behavior to the Federal Trade Commission, your state attorney general, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. These agencies have the power to investigate and penalize debt collectors who violate the law. This type of scam is particularly upsetting because it preys on people during one of the most difficult times of their lives. But by understanding your rights and standing your ground, you can protect yourself and your family from being taken advantage of. So, have you ever been contacted about a deceased relative's debt? How did you handle it? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story could help someone else in a similar situation. Don't forget to check out our other videos for more tips on handling debt collection scams and protecting your finances. I'll see you next time.